get so bored I could scream. I'd like to do just whatever I like.
It's not fair.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Warfair, the podcast for the War Law Institute. Today I'm very happy to be joined by Ali Jaffery. Ali Jaffery is a nuclear weapons expert and an expert in security and strategic studies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me to your podcast.
So I think we have to start off by talking about the Pakistan-Saudi Defense Treaty. And there's been so much talk about whether we have extended our nuclear umbrella to Saudi. And what do you make of the pact in and of itself? And what do you make of this nuclear umbrella?
Thank you for asking this very timely and pertinent question. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have had a long and historic military relationship spanning for 4 or 5 decades. I think what this pact is doing is that it's formalizing that security relationship, which involved training, coordination, exchange programs, Saudi cadets being trained at the Staff College, Infantry School and other places, and vice versa. As for your concerns and questions about a nuclear umbrella being extended, I believe Pakistan is perhaps the only nuclear armed state which has a country-specific deterrent equation. So we have made it absolutely clear since the very beginning of our nuclear weapons program that it is geared towards deterring India and its aggression of severe kinds and types, so that we don't come in a position where we were in 1971. Our posture, our unwritten doctrine, our capabilities, all are geared towards deterring India at all levels of war. We have a policy known as full spectrum deterrence under the ambit of credible minimum deterrence, which means that at all levels of conflict, we have nuclear capabilities to deter India. And those capabilities cover the entirety of India, both in terms of target and territory. That's about it. There's no evidence to suggest that Pakistan has the capabilities or the desire to extend a nuclear umbrella, or what we normally in literature call extended deterrence, to Saudi Arabia or any other country. It will be against Pakistan's stated position. All the talk that's coming out regarding this is mere insinuation, and there is no evidence on the ground to suggest any change in Pakistan's nuclear policy. We remain an India-centric nuclear force. Our Shaheen 3 missile, which has a range of almost 2,800 kilometers, covers the extreme parts of under Indian control, which is the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. So that's about it. And I have not found anything that gives any indication of a change in that policy and approach.
Okay, very interesting. I find Mohammed bin Salman to be an incredibly interesting figure in terms of Saudi Arabia and what he wants for the future. And I remember reading in Bob Woodward's book that he had talked to the Americans about buying uranium. And they said, well, everyone's going to be worried that you're going to be building a nuclear bomb with it. And he said, he kind of pooed on it and said, well, if I wanted a nuclear bomb, I would just buy one from Pakistan. And I think it's interesting, especially in terms of his attempt to technologically upgrade Saudi Arabia, in particular in terms of weapon deals with the US, that he's doing it very differently from the Iranian way. The Iranian way is to build homegrown indigenous capacity. Saudi is like, what can I buy at the bazaar?
I think there is nothing bars Saudi Arabia from exploiting nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. No country is barred from doing that.
Unless you're Iran.
No, we can go into that.
Yeah,
Iran
we
is
should,
a different ball game altogether, and that I think we need to do a separate podcast on the whole Iranian issue. But the idea is, again, statements like this account for nothing. Like, there were instances when other countries, including Pakistan, said if we need a nuclear weapon, we'll buy it off the shelf way back in the 60s. So enriching uranium to develop a nuclear energy infrastructure is fair game. And that should not be taken as something akin to a nuclear weaponization, because weaponization is a long haul. It's a long process that would require Saudi Arabia or any other country to cross a number of thresholds. So that's I think that should not be. We should not lose sleep over that for now. Yes. So, for example, if Iran were to go nuclear at some point, Saudi Arabia, despite the fact that it is now improving its ties with Iran, will likely follow suit. And we have always talked about the domino theory when it comes to nuclear proliferation. So that possibility would only come to the fore if and when Iran decides to go nuclear. But right now, I don't think Saudi Arabia is mulling over the possibility of weaponizing its nuclear program, which is even otherwise nascent. Also, posturing like Saudi-US ties have not been ideal in the past 5 or 6 years. So posturing to eke out more dividends from the US is a different thing altogether. And we just recently saw the US declaring Saudi Arabia as a non-NATO ally. And they've also signed a new deal as well, the details of which are yet to be out in the open. So I think states, including Saudi Arabia, do these kinds and types of things. Posturing is very important. And I think we also need to look at the timing of the Saudi-Pak defense agreement in that context too. So for Pakistan, it is a reflection of the fact that Pakistan's diplomatic footprint is expanding. And remember, this deal came to limelight a month or so after Qatar was attacked by Israeli forces. Now, Qatar is a US security ally, and despite that, Israel struck Qatar. So a Pakistan-Saudi deal could have been a signal that, okay, we cannot solely rely on the US as a security provider.
Yeah.
So Pakistan is a good option, and this entire deal, therefore, I think has a lot of signaling value attached to it. And rest, I think, as I said earlier, it will formalize a relationship that has existed for a long, long time.
And how do you think that India would be viewing the deal? And just in the larger context of Indo-Pak relations, we had a 4-day war in May, which was quickly escalating before we had announcement of a ceasefire. How likely do you think it is that India is looking to attack again? I know that it is really building up its defenses, and we've had a lot of rhetoric from Modi, a lot of tough talk from Indian politicians. And at the same time, how would they view the Pak-Saudi deal?
I think any deal or initiative that puts Pakistan in a good position diplomatically, politically, and symbolically would not go down well with India. It's as simple as that. India has created this narrative that we have isolated Pakistan. I have said it many a time before, and I'll say it again. In this day and age, especially with the advent of technology, no country can be isolated. It's just a myth. So Pakistan is far from being isolated. So that's always, you saw the Indian media, how it reacted to this SMDA or the deal that we're talking about. As for your concerns about what could happen between India and Pakistan going forward, let's zoom out. So India, when the Pahalgam attack took place, India was all guns blazing. It said, we'll knock the hell out of Pakistan and we will just show the world how a lesson is taught to a country that is not cooperating with us on terrorism. But whatever happened after that has been a political disaster for India. India did conduct a number of strikes on a number of Pakistani cities, including near the capital Rawalpindi, in Rawalpindi. But politically, it did not achieve what it wanted to achieve. Pakistan did respond in a manner that India was not expecting.
Yeah.
And what happened with the Indian Rafale aircraft has made India very defensive. India is on the back foot. It was signaling to the world that we will enter and exit a crisis on our own terms, and we will subjugate Pakistan in a very quick time. But what happened was that the US had to intervene. And now India is, one, it is trying to fend off the Rafale losses.
Yeah.
And the other, it is trying to tell the world that no, the US did not intervene. Pakistan was forced to agree to a ceasefire because of our brazen attacks on Pakistani soil. But that has not worked to its advantage. Pakistan has enjoyed a period has enjoyed a diplomatic purple patch, if you were to put it mildly. We are at good terms with the US right now. One could argue it's person specific, but it is what it is right now. We are doing well with China, and remember, Chinese weaponry and other support were instrumental in our winning the tactical round of the war. So all of this has really damaged the Modi government badly. And therefore, we need to look at those statements that you alluded to very carefully. So India is saying every other day an Indian official comes on TV, be it a civilian or a military official, and says, Operation Sindoor was just a trailer. We will not show any restraint going forward. Not that they showed any restraint last time. Attacking a capital and attacking the heart of Pakistan, Lahore, cannot be categorized in the restraint ambit. So that, as recently as yesterday, they said the same thing. So they said, we no longer follow restraint. We are ready. Operation Sindoor continues. We have seen Indian Army carrying out exercises. The Trishul exercise just ended recently. The Indian Defense Minister, time and again, comes on TV and says that next time the Navy will knock the hell out of Pakistan. And then also, they are also creating these stories around Pakistan trying to whip up tensions along the Sir Creek and the Run of Kutch areas. So all of this does not augur well. And to salvage the lost political mileage and the lost political capital, the Modi government might decide to do something again. But there is one thing that gives me a bit of hope. Recently, there was a bomb attack near the Red Fort in Delhi. So initially, India said it's a CNG blast. And then the hyperactive media, the war frenzy media started saying that it's a terrorist attack. But so far, if you look at the official statements coming out from New Delhi, there is some kind of restraint in that. Like they've still not dubbed it a terrorist attack and linked it to Pakistan. They're saying we will bring everybody in before the law, and the perpetrators will be brought to justice.
They tried to link it to Turkey.
but
which was a bit of a wild card. But I thought the fact that they're not linking it at all to Pakistan means that there's absolutely no.
And remember one thing, this circumspection goes against what Modi said on May 12, 2025. He said, any act of terrorism will be automatically be traced to Pakistan, will be linked to Pakistan, and it will be an act of war. So coming down from that high rhetoric is quite telling. And we will have evidence in the next couple of months as to why this is the case. It could take years, but one can understand that that what India wanted to achieve out of Operation Sindoor was not achieved.
I think it's really interesting because I came across an article by Sushant Singh, Indian academic, who was talking about how the Indian Air Force was in complete disarray. And that was 2 weeks before the operation happened. And he was lamenting the state of the Indian Air Force and also saying that the Indian Air Chief has waved a red flag saying that we really are not in a position that we can take on anyone. And we saw the effects of that playing out in the 4-day war. And you had a lot of mistakes from the Indian side. You had a lot of underestimating of Pakistan's capacity. And I worry now that because the Indian side has proved to be so delusional and the Indian media has just been foaming at the mouth, and I think the Pakistani public, in terms of this as a PR win for Pakistanis, has been that we can see that now in Indian popular society in the terms of what they want to see Pakistan as and what we actually are. But I wonder now we are going to be underestimating their capacity because fine, the Air Force, it was flagged 2 weeks earlier that they were in a state of disarray. Their Navy is not in the same state and neither is their conventional army. And so I wonder whether the play then on the other aspects of the army is going to be that we're going to have a ground incursion or we're going to have a naval incursion.
I think the good thing that is happening right now at this end is that I haven't come across any statements which indicate any sense of complacency, and that's a very good thing.
Okay.
Underestimating an enemy, not least a nuclear-armed enemy, is a recipe for disaster, and that should not happen. I have written since the start of the operation. I've written a number of times and stress home this point that the very idea of thinking or portraying your enemy as a passive actor is deadly dangerous. India has signaled to the world that we just went in on our own terms, did what we had to do and came back on our own terms. The US did not do anything. It means that you're not giving Pakistan the agency that it has. And when that happens and when you underestimate your enemy, you can be reckless. And when you are reckless as a nuclear armed state, you never know what could happen. It's very easy to start a crisis, but you don't know what could happen. Because it's not only you. If I were to enter into a brawl with you, I'm not the only one dictating terms. If I don't factor in your responses in my calculations, then we are entering a very dark phase in which uncharted waters where we don't know what could happen. Like, okay, I start round 1, you retaliate with round 2, but we don't know what could happen in round 3 because you cannot choreograph escalation. It's not a video game.
Yeah.
It is not even academic books written by Herman Khan.
I would also say that the de-escalation that happened in the 4-day war was because Pakistan waited it showed, I think, too much restraint in the first 2-3 days, where it did not react, it did not react, it did not react. And then we achieved de-escalation through escalation. And so how important do you think nuclear weapons were in that equation, in the sense of the US getting involved, in the sense of China perhaps getting involved and bringing both countries together to have a ceasefire?
When a region is nuclearized, when two combatants have nuclear weapons, it is on the back of the mind, they're on the back of the minds of everyone involved, be it the warring parties, India and Pakistan, and be it the US. Historically, in all the crises, starting with the Kargil conflict of 1999, we have seen the fear of nuclear escalation being something critical to garnering US involvement. This time, a lot of literature has already come out that the same playbook was witnessed, and we saw that playing out. The US was concerned about nuclear escalation, even albeit at a later stage. First, it was saying, they will sort this out on their own. But then, when Pakistan had retaliated or engaged in defensive combat actions, which saw the downing of 5 or 6 aircraft of the Indian Air Force, that realization started to kick in. So, when the world sees two nuclear-armed neighbors engaging in combat, not least with missiles flying around each other's cities, it can't be sitting idle. It has, because you never know. As I said, escalation cannot be choreographed. If I'm trying, in my own mind, I'm launching a limited attack, and what if that limited attack hits a very significant target? And that could spiral out of control. So we never know. We just can't control escalation as if we are having a remote control. You cannot, remote control it the way you want it to. So yes, nuclear weapons will continue to play a role of existential deterrence. Nuclear weapons did play a role. Let me take this opportunity to tell our viewers and listeners that nuclear weapons are not a panacea for everything. Nuclear weapons cannot and do not deter everything under the sun. Nuclear weapons cannot deter firing on the LOC. Nuclear weapons cannot deter aerial attacks. Nuclear weapons can deter an enemy from launching an attack which threatens your existence. So nuclear weapons at an existential level have had an impact, and they will continue to have an impact. Now, should we be confident that nuclear weapons will always save the day for us? No. It's foolish to be confident all the time, because these kinds and types of escalatory scenarios, if they keep on repeating, then we could enter into uncharted waters, which we haven't traversed before. And there are no bilateral crisis communication and crisis management mechanisms between the two countries. And you add to the mix the advent of emerging and disruptive technologies, AI, cloud computing, drones, and all those things. The fog of war becomes thicker, and when two enemies are not talking, we never know. So if you say that, nuclear weapon, we have nukes, we can just play out our dangerous games below that. That's recklessness. That's not prudence. That's not strategic prudence.
Sure. But I think ideal moment to pivot towards two other nemesis in a neighboring region to ours, which is Iran and Israel. And we saw these unlawful strikes being taken out by Israel and the US against Iran's nuclear sites. I do think that Iran has taken the wrong policy when it comes to nuclear weapons. I think it should have gone full North Korea. I think it should have done what Kim Jong-un did, because I think he has now ensured that he will die in his bed. As to the Ayatollah in Iran, I don't think that I can be certain of that for him. And I think that the recent strikes, the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, kind of proves that. So what do you think about in that situation? Because as much as nuclear weapons can't be relied on for all of the reasons that you mentioned, at the same time, they allow for some sort of regional harmony in this situation to prevent it perhaps from escalating. And if it does, it leads to an apocalyptic situation. But with Iran and Israel, how do you see that playing out?
Okay, I think that's a very good segue. But before I answer this question, let me, for a minute, step back and clarify one thing, that in the Indo-Pak context, Pakistan's nuclear weapons have served their purpose quite well. Escalation has not gone to a level that it used to go before nuclear weapons were introduced in South Asia. Smaller acts of incursions would lead to the declaration of war, and those wars would last for 17, 18 days, and one also led to the dismemberment of the country. So nuclear weapons are doing what they were meant to do. But obviously, will they continue doing that? That's a question that every South Asia watcher asks day in, day out, and there is no space for recklessness and a full-scale conventional war.
But you're saying that they are a net good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are deterring what they were meant to deter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming to Iran and Israel, I have written about exactly what you're pointing out. Kim Jong-un continues to retain nuclear weapons because he fears meeting the same fate as Saddam and Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Because they gave up nuclear weapons, their nuclear programs, and what happened to them is
you got sodomized at the polls.
Exactly. So this is why U.S. Washington's effort to eke out Pyongyang's complete, verifiable, irreversible disarmament. That's it is actually called CVID, has failed. And now North Korea is a nuclear reality. A nuclear North Korea is a reality that we cannot deny. The US has also not denied North Korea's nuclear reality. You saw Trump shaking. Trump was calling Kim Jong-un a rocket man. And when Kim Jong-un told the world that yes, it can also not only strike South Korea and Japan, but also continental US.
Yeah.
That very president was shaking hands and calling him my best buddy. And he even crossed the DMZ in June or July 2019 and they shook hands. So now North Korea is a nuclear reality. At the same time, when Trump was breaking bread with Kim, he was calling the Iranian regime as a bunch of fanatic Shia mullahs. Despite the fact that Iran at that time was very much, and still is very much, a part of the non-proliferation treaty, at that time it was also compliant with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And I'm not saying that the IAEA that remains a guarantor in International Atomic Energy Agency, it spoke to Iran's compliance, but the US unilaterally withdrew from that agreement. It was not a treaty; it's an agreement. Then Iran obviously decided to, increase the level of enrichment from 3.67% to now it's enriching at 60%, which is also under the NPT. It is also allowed.
Yeah, it is allowed to do that.
The problem is, and it was also engaging in negotiations. As you rightly said, Israel carried out illegal strikes. Israel is not only not part of the NPT, but also has a nuclear weapons program. It follows a policy of nuclear opacity. The US and Israel's have an understanding called the Mayer-Nixon understanding of 1969, where the US will not talk, and the Israelis will not tell about their nuclear program. So imagine a country that is party to the NPT, which is considered the cornerstone of the nuclear non-proliferation regime, is being attacked by a non-NPT nuclear state And the facilities that are attacked are under the safeguards of the IAEA.
And the IAEA has been hugely complicit in what happened. It's been very much that the head has at times previously, and WikiLeaks has shown it with the previous head, but the current Italian head too, very much in the pocket of Mossad.
I would not go that far, but I would say one thing. The IAEA was found wanting. Very much wanting.
Yeah, at the very least.
It was found very much wanting because the IAEA board meeting took place 16 or 17 hours before the strikes took place. And the strikes took place 2 days before the 6th round of negotiations was to take place in Oslo, or I think in Istanbul. And you see the difference. When the Russians attacked the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the IAEA was explicitly condemnatory. But I did not see that level of condemnation when Iran was being struck regularly for 12 days. It was not only those strikes on the nuclear facilities. And then what happened? A big blow to the NPT, in my opinion, was when an NPT state, at the behest of Israel, which is not part of the NPT and has nuclear weapons, attacked the safeguarded nuclear facilities of an NPT state, Iran. So it was not only Israel that launched attacks on Iran, it was also the US that did so. Now, those attacks were coupled with statements threatening the very existence of the current regime. That is where I'm coming to your question. So you see the Tehran buildings being bombed day in, day out, and then you see tweets from Trump and from the Zionist entity saying that the regime is about to end. We are going to give Iranian people its right. And then you also saw Raza Shah Pahlavi being very active in DC.
Yeah.
That obviously would have had an effect on Khamenei. Now, anybody who understands Iran divides its international relations into two parts, the pre-79 and the post-79. And about the post-79 Iran, Henry Kissinger in his book, the late Henry Kissinger, he wrote in his book World Order that I haven't seen a country as committed to its national interest as Iran. Let's zoom out further. Over the past 2 years, Iran has lost its pillars of power. It had a web of proxies in the region, which it has used and leveraged to secure its peripheries and its center. Those have been disintegrated. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis are on the run.
Yeah.
Iran also relied on its ballistic missiles, which have been exposed, whose performances have been exposed in not only in this war but also in True Promise 1 and True Promise 2 operation. When you have that, and you have these incessant threats about regime change, what do those leaders do? They have examples that, okay, the only person who is not being threatened right now is, as you said, Kim Jong-un. So as a rational actor, Iran will have the temptation to change its nuclear policy. It leveraged a lot of latency in the past, but now moving beyond 60% would probably make a lot of sense. Even if it does not weaponize, because weaponization requires a number of processes and it also requires a lot of care and precision. And probably this might not be the right time, but Iran can certainly change its nuclear policy and be on that hedging side of the equation more than it is now. Just because in my opinion, it is left with nothing right now.
Yeah.
So maybe we are not seeing any fireworks as far as statements are concerned right now. I think the Iranian leadership is reassessing things. And
It should.
I believe the nuclear weapon option is not, I believe it's not off the table. I'm not saying it will develop a full arsenal, but it has been forced to rethink its nuclear policy.
I would disagree with you on some points, which is I don't know if it's that clear-cut a difference between 1979 and what came before. I think that the Shah was moving in directions that the US didn't like either. And I think that when the mullahs came into power, they were super pragmatic, especially because they immediately went into a war with Iraq. And for that, they had to band with an ally, which ended up being Israel. And so I think that the mullahs in power, the ayatollahs, have been incredibly pragmatic. And I think that they have bent over backwards to facilitate the US and to facilitate any of their concerns vis-a-vis Israel. Israel has had none of it. And I think if you are not going to change your nuclear posture now, then when? You're facing an existential threat. Like, please, if you have the capacity, and if North Korea can have the capacity, and if Pakistan can have the capacity, I'm sure Iran can. And also, one of the things which bugged me even more about the 12-day war was the systematic slaughter of nuclear scientists. They're civilians, as if they were combatants in it, as if you could take out Oppenheimer in the Second World War, right? They're not, you can't. They're civilians. And the fact that Israel keeps on expanding its definition of military targets to include almost everybody. And we've seen that in Palestine, and we've seen that in Iran too. And I definitely think that there is no argument besides an old fatwa from Ayatollah Khomeini that you're really going to rely on now when you're facing an existential threat.
Let me tell you an interesting story about that fatwa. So I was at a conference like 6-7 years ago, and there was an Iranian participant. He said, I mentioned the fatwa, and he said the Ayatollah would be dead 300 years after the fatwa. So nobody would care. And I specifically mentioned Henry Kissinger's statement, and that's right, true. So there's no disagreement between us. I think, as I said earlier, they're rational actors. They're being pragmatic.
Yeah.
The West tells us that the mullahs have exported the Shia revolution. That's not entirely true. They have partnered with Sunni. Hamas is a Sunni organization. So they are pragmatic. They will partner with whosoever helps them advance their national security objectives. So this is why I believe I do not rule out Iran having some kind of a nuclear capability in the months or years to come. They're reassessing. They're not emotional actors. They're quiet, and that quietness is not akin to them being submissive. They're probably re-strategizing, and they're thinking what to do now, because, as I said, their planks of the indirect strategy have been split asunder.
I'm just laughing because any lover of Persian poetry, I think, would laugh at the notion that Iranians are not emotional people. These are very emotional people.
Emotional, but not in statecraft.
Yes,
yeah, I'm right.
yes,
not in
sure.
statecraft. They have a lot of emotions. They have a rich history.
Very much.
And there was this very bizarre tweet by Trump that I will destroy the Iranian civilization, and that received a pushback. You cannot destroy the grand Persian Empire and that grandiose aims and objectives, and they have a rich history. So, but when it comes to being pragmatic,
I agree with you.
when it comes to statecraft, they're not emotional.
I think it would be remiss if I didn't end with talking about the fact that we keep on hearing from commentators how the world could spiral into nuclear disaster, and the conflict that we haven't touched upon, perhaps because it's not that adjacent to us, but where this is most often quoted is Russia-Ukraine. So how likely do you think that is? And where do you see the most likely nuclear hotspots in the world to be?
We have identified familiar lessons when it comes to nuclear weapons from the Russo-Ukraine war. Scholarship that has come out on the war tells us a number of things which are quite familiar to our previous thoughts on nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons do deter, but they do not compel. Like, they are not good to compel or coerce the enemy into doing something. Russia has dished out many a nuclear threat to Ukraine, but those threats have not stopped Ukraine, NATO, or the US from doing things that they were meant to stop. So that's that. Russia has also changed its nuclear doctrine a bit. It did so last year. Regrettably, the war continues. Sensitive installations were attacked by Ukraine earlier this year with drones, but people were thinking now the Russians would really sort the Ukrainians out, but nothing happened. So, like, using a nuclear weapon is not dime a dozen. It's not that easy. We have seen no nuclear weapon getting used since Nagasaki, since 9th August 1945. It is not easy. Taking that decision will never be easy. However, as I said earlier, that a nuclear weapon has not been used in the past 80 years is no guarantee that it won't be used tomorrow, day after. The technology-human interface has still not struck that balance. So we don't know what could happen. Like, it's very difficult for me or anybody to actually tell when and how a nuclear weapon will be used. But accidents are likely to happen. The emotions of leaders will come into the equation. You may think that you can, what to me is a limited attack is not a limited attack to you. So how you perceive my actions will also determine what you do and how. Round 1, round 2, round 3, you never know what way the wind could blow. And then accidents. Remember in 2022, an Indian missile accidentally landed in Pakistan. Now, right now, we don't have the means to determine whether an incoming warhead is armed with whether an incoming missile is armed with a conventional warhead or a nuclear warhead. So imagine there's a flood of information coming your way. There's AI, there's deep fake, there is a bevy of latest technologies, and something has been planted. And you only have 2 to 3 minutes to decide what to do.
That's exactly the plot for A House of Dynamite.
Yeah, so-
have you seen that film
No,
on Netflix?
I have not yet seen that.
It's exactly that plot. Yeah.
And an important thing that I believe people in South Asia are not paying attention to is that in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world averted a major disaster because the two leaders, Nikita Khrushchev and John F. Kennedy, both understood full well as to what would be the repercussions of nuclear use.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, today, leaders do not, and this is my opinion, do not have the same understanding or the same level of nuclear fear. When two or three leaders, or any number of leaders come down from the brink, taking different lessons about that crisis, the situation remains unstable. So if two leaders terminate a crisis thinking that, oh, we averted a tragedy, they might enter into some kinds and types of agreements that could increase nuclear stability. But if either of the leader thinks that, no, we won this round and we can go one up in the next round, I think the environment becomes really unstable and nuclear stability comes under real threat. To top all of that, I believe that the return of use of force as a preferred instrument of policy over diplomacy is a very bad sign. And
Definitely.
once you start using force, and when you also have the weapons to escalate, then restraint really comes under stress.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that the last 3 years since 2022 have almost been a state of constant conflict in some part of the world, to the extent that we have not seen prior to 2022. So a worrying scenario to end it on. But thank you so much for joining us. It was such an interesting discussion. And thank you so much for watching at home, and we hope you'll tune in for future episodes.